Good morning, everyone. I extend a very warm welcome to all of you. We appreciate you taking time off your busy schedules to join us today. As you all know, Union Christian College Aluva is celebrating 100 years of its inception. In this context, the Research and Postgraduate Department of Psychology welcome you for the 7th live webinar on the theme Marine Psychology, an emerging field for psychologists. Marine psychology is a branch of psychology that assesses, prevent, and treat a number of different mental and emotional problems experienced by sailors and thereby equipping them to handle the pressures of the nature of work of a marine. Today, we have Dr. Keerthi Pai, our distinguished alumnus, as resource person to familiarize us on this topic. Dr. Keerthi Pai has done MPhil in clinical psychology from KMC Manipal and PhD from Madras University. She is one of the very few trained marine psychologists in India. I am sure that this webinar will inspire many of you to step into this new field. Before going into the session, I would like to give some general instructions to the participants. There will be an interactive session at the end of the webinar where you can post your questions in the comment section for the speaker to respond after the session. You will also find a link for the feedback form in the comment section towards the end of the webinar. Fill in the form and submit it in 15 minutes time to ensure that you receive your e-certificates. Let's start by invoking the blessings of the Almighty. We will have a silent prayer. Thank you. To formally welcome you to this program, I invite Ms. Saina Susan Abraham, Head of the Department of Psychology, for the welcome speech.
A very good morning and a warm welcome to the Research and Postgraduate Department of Psychology, Union Christian College. It's my pleasure and privilege to welcome all of you to the 7th live webinar as part of the Centenary Celebrations of Union Christian College. And as we know, as the previous webinars went, the resource persons are distinguished alumni of our department itself. It's my privilege to welcome each and every one of you, participants from different colleges and institutions across the state and beyond the borders of the state. Our former faculty members, HODs of the department, a very warm welcome to all of you. The alumni of the department, also students and teachers from our own department and from other departments of the college. A very warm welcome to this 7th live webinar. Today's resource person is Dr. Keerthi Pai, who is a clinical psychologist as well as a trained marine psychologist. And from this webinar onwards, we are introducing our alumni who have ventured into divergent areas of psychology. So it would be a great educational experience for our students, and it would be an inspiration for budding psychologists to broaden their horizon within the field of psychology. So with all the best to the participants and the resource person for a very fruitful session. Once again, a very warm welcome to all of you to this webinar. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Now I invite Dr. Neelima Ranjit, Assistant Professor of Psychology, to introduce our speaker. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Nicole. Am I audible? Am I audible to everyone? Respected Head of the Department, Ms. Saina Susan Abraham, our resource person, Dr. Keerthi Pai, Coordinator, Dr. Merikutti PJ, faculty members and students from various departments of UC College and other institutions, esteemed alumni, dear participants, students, and friends. It is a moment of pride and honor for me for having got the opportunity to introduce one of the few experts among clinical psychologists working in the field of marine psychology in India, Dr. Keerthi Pai, a distinguished alumnus of the Department of Psychology, Union Christian College. After completing her undergraduate course in psychology in 1995 from UC College. She went on to pursue her master's degree in psychology from Madras University. Dr. Keerthi Pai has done MPhil in clinical psychology from Kasturba Medical College, Manipal, and PhD from Madras University. She is a consultant clinical psychology in Apollo Hospitals and partner in Element Edge Psychological Support Services. She is a guest faculty in Institute of Mental Health, Chennai. She is joint secretary of Tamil Nadu Association of Clinical Psychologists. She got trained in marine psychology from Denmark in 2011 and is involved in psychological assessment and therapy for seafarers in Southeast Asia. She is a certified clinical supervisor from Australian Counselling Association. She has published more than 10 research articles, including a few on marine psychology. She is involved in developing a postgraduate course in marine psychology in association with Raksha Shakti University, Ahmedabad, which would be the first course in marine psychology in Southeast Asia. Keerthi is a very vibrant and enthusiastic person and has a very passion for the subject. I met Keerthi a few years back for an official meeting, and ever since, her friendly, warm, and down to earth nature in her interactions with me have always made me feel that I have known her for ages. Her love and affection for UC College was always showered onto me as well. Uh, Kirti, we are so happy to have you amongst us. And I'm very sure that our participants, all the students, and all members in this group, this particular field is a new subject for most of us. And our students are, in fact, lucky to have to get the information for the first time from a person from our own family of UC College Psychology Department. We look forward for an interesting and informative session with you. Over to you, Keerthi.
Thank you very much, Dr. Neelima. I always feel a very good connect, of course, to UC College and to you. Even though we met officially, it's always been like a family meeting, family get together. So thank you very much for the kind words. And good morning to all of you participants who are listening to me. At the onset, dear faculty members of UC College and other institutions, and all dear students who are listening, and other participants who are in the live stream, I extend a warm thank you and gratefulness that I have been chosen to be part of this alumni webinar, and it's indeed a big privilege for me to be a speaker here. I'm humbled by your words and the legacy of UC College. I think when I joined UC College, I had stars in my eyes, and I always wanted to be, coming back to UC College. So every time I make a trip to Kerala, I see to it that at least I get at least one meeting with all the faculty members, get back and talk to people, just see around UC College and the greenery and the buildings and how life has. It's the old world charm. There are new students, but we still have our memories, and that's where I knew a lot of my personality traits, the leadership traits in me, the friendships in me. And I'm proud to say that a lot of my friends have logged in today. And I'm proud to say that UC College made me understand the good qualities in me. And I still have friends who continue to be best friends from the time of UC College. And of course, I've made new friends with all the senior faculty members. I fondly remember Leela Miss, Molina Miss, Varghese Paul sir, and of course Simon sir, who has been like a father figure to us. And I remember all our journeys together. So thank you very much for bringing me here. Without much time taken, I would now move on to marine psychology. So what I would talk in this 1 hour given to me would be a presentation on marine psychology, where I would take you through different aspects of marine psychology. Why is it important that we psychologists work with the mariners? I would be only talking about the merchant navy because that's what I have been trained in. I am not getting into
defense sector. We are purely talking about the merchant navy sector. And I would also talk about my training in Denmark, what it happened, and I would then look at what are we doing in the Indian scenario, because there are only a few of us who are trained and few of us who are actively involved in the marine sector. So let me do screen sharing. So I hope you're all able to see my screen. Yeah, that's about me. If at any point, if I'm not audible or the screen is not visible, please do send me a message. My phone is here with me. Uh, please help me with that, Dr. Nilima. Yes. So when we talk about marine psychology, we all talk about, when we are looking at romance, when we are looking at adventure, when we are looking at, anything to do with fantasy, we always tend to look at the sea, the ocean, the waters. So in any movie, any fiction, any literature you take, if you want to show that the hero or the heroine, or and I don't want to be gender biased, anyone in the main character has to be shown as macho or powerful or strong, we tend to attribute that to the sea, the ocean, the currents, the tornadoes, and etc. Right? So, what we understand here is either the sea is all romance or the sea is all disturbed waters, the tornadoes, the tsunamis, etc. Yeah. So when we look at, there are a lot of movies and fiction, and what we are looking at is um, all the, what do you say, the movies and the fiction look at um, pictures like this, which we are looking at different aspects of seafaring and shipping. But are we actually looking at fiction here? No. This is not how we would see a ship in real life. This is only a fantasy, and I'm sure all of you can think of many new movies, old movies, in all vernacular languages, in as well as in English, where we have looked at different aspects of seafaring. Yes. So what are we looking at here is definitely not fiction or fantasy. We are looking at real life. This is how one of the ship models would look like. This I've borrowed it from the internet because I'm not allowed to take a real picture and put it here unless it's given on the internet. So this is from the internet where we've seen ships with different levels. So we understand there's a lot of physics involved here because the ship is made of iron and steel, and we know that the ship has to have buoyancy. It has to not sink in water. It has to float in water, and with the weight of it, there is a lot of machinery. There's a lot of human beings, there's a lot of cargo, there's a lot of weight involved in the whole process of it. Yeah. So moving ahead, we also would be talking about different parts of the ship. It's important for us to understand that, because when we were initially initiated into this whole field of marine psychology, the first, I think, almost like a half a day was spoken to us about the different vocabularies they use in the shipping field. Like, for example, something like VLCC. So for me, VLCC, you all know what, but it's not what we actually would. We were not thinking of the slimming and the cutting saloons. We were thinking of the ship make. Yeah. So things like a deck. A deck for me would always mean deck of cards till I was initiated into the marine field. So there are a lot of different vocabularies which these people use, and it was very essential that as a psychologist being initiated into the marine field, we understand the vocabulary used in that field, because only then, right from the beginning, the rapport is established, because only then we can talk their lingo. So this is where we understand. This is just a very, very brief part of explanations of how the ship would look like. So you see a bridge, you see an engine room, you see the decks, you see the port side, you see the bay side, all of it, right? So what we need to understand is that we have to talk their lingo, we have to talk their vocabulary, because it is very natural for them to talk in that. And in the process of therapy or in the process of assessment, we can't be spending time on what exactly do you mean by deck, or what exactly do you mean by the bridge. Yeah, so we have to be conversant with their way of conversations. Yes, so what we need to understand is, most of the part of the ship would be under the water, and there is a huge level of the ship which is above the water, where the people would work, the cargo would be there. And of course the cargo can be either objects like cars or vehicles, or it could be chemicals, it could be fuel, it could be food, and depending on that, people would have different work permits and work responsibilities. Yes, now why do we need to understand all this? Is because it is a high hazard industry. And what do we mean by hazard? Is there is a potential to cause harm. Like, for example, other industries like nuclear industry, chemical industry, or hospital industry, we know that marine industry does have its potential hazards. And as we know, what the literature says is that shipping is the sixth most hazardous industry. So you can imagine the amount of tensions and the stress which these people go through. They know that it is hazardous, but they still want to work there. Yeah. We also understand that there are about 90,000 vessels involved. So you can imagine, in each vessel, there would be roughly about 20 to 25 human beings working from different parts of the world. So you can imagine, you do this maths and say 90 into 25. So you can imagine the number of people at one moment working on different ships around the world. This is one part of the shipping world. The other part of shipping world is where people are constantly on the shore, helping them navigate, helping them getting different informations. It could be navigations, it could be work related, it could be decision making, it could be stress oriented, it could be anything. But there is quite a lot of people who are working on the shore, connecting the shipping different ships on board. Yeah, so it is by itself a huge population of human beings, and that is where our role comes in. So where there are human beings, where there is hazard, where there is stress, there is potential for a psychologist to work in. And that's how this whole concept of marine psychology came. It's very nascent, very new, and that's also a reason why not many people are involved in this. And that's a huge advantage, because the young people, like people who have joined in now, there is a huge potential to develop as a marine psychologist. Yes, it is important for us to understand that it is not just people on board who can suffer, even people outside. So you've heard of oil spills, you've heard of shipwrecks, you've heard of collisions with fisher boats. So we've heard of people, fishing folks hitting a large ship and having accidents. We've heard of fire accidents. So in India, abroad, we've heard of cargo being kept in a certain place and that got inflamed. So we have heard of lot of hazards and risks and traumatic experiences, and this picture actually gives us a very, very bad impression of what would be ideally in a shipping world. It's not like this all the time, but this picture actually hurt me a lot, because when I saw a duck which is supposed to be such a soft being baked or burnt alive was very heart wrenching for me to understand that that's a big hazard which we are involved in. And of course, the environmental pollution is a thing which we need to keep in mind when it comes to marine world. Yeah. Moving ahead, we all have seen this movie. And I'm sure if it was a more interactive discussion, I would be watching you smiling. And I know people of my age, this was an iconic movie, and people were always spoke about the Titanic as, the epitome of love and uh, sacrifice and, the works. Yeah. But in the shipping world, this it's not the movie I'm talking about. The Titanic, the incident, the shipwreck was a major, major milestone in the life of mariners, because at the point when the Titanic was built, the shipping community, the masters, the people who work in the ship, the management, the owners of the ship, everybody thought that this is a ship which would never sink, and this is going to be a milestone in successful stories. But unfortunately, we all know this is what happened. We all know that the Titanic hit the iceberg and it broke in the middle, and there were lot of human life which was lost, a lot of environmental pollution, and lot of damage which was involved. And that led to a huge revolution when it came to the shipping world, because it led to a lot of safety norms. So this is very important, because this is one area, one population where safety cannot be compromised. Yeah. So it led to a lot of safety norms here, lot of rules and regulations, and they are very, very stringent about rules and regulations. Yeah. So a little bit facts on the Titanic, the ship. We need to understand that this was the largest passenger ship, where about 2,000 odd people were on board, both including both passengers and the crew members. So, for 2,000 odd members were sailing on board, there were only about 1,000 lifeboats. Sorry, there were only about 16 wood plus 4 lifeboats, which could accommodate about 1,000 people. So, what happens to the rest of 1,000 odd people? That is where the miscalculations happen, because there is a lot of decision making happening there. There's a lot of crisis interventions happening there. There's a lot of human being management, interpersonal relationships happening there. And it was important that we understand that the shipping as such, there was a lot of misplanning, misguidance, difficulties in decision making, and of course, personality factors which were involved here. What we need to understand here is that we are also seeing a lot of environmental pollution. That's point number two, because you see how the environment was just not thought about when it came to the shipping world right here, and that led to a lot of revolutions in the rules and regulations, that it has to be somewhere where we need to keep the environment safe and healthy. Yeah. So there were about more than 6 warnings given to the captain in the Titanic, but somewhere the planning was, or the decision was, that this is a ship which would never collide, or this is a ship which would never collapse. And we know what happened. Yeah. So what we need to understand is personality traits of the personality traits of the um, captain, personality traits of other individuals who are working along with the captain, as well as people who are involved in the management of the shipping, as well as the owners. All of them are equally responsible for any damage, any environmental hazards, or any accidents or collisions involving the shipping field. Yes. Moving ahead, there are a lot of hazards which we know of. Yeah. So we know that there can be weather hazards. So what happens is, when you have a hurricane or a typhoon, we all know what happened when we had the floods in Kerala. So, and we all know we had equally bad floods a few years before that in Chennai. So we know it was such a difficult phase during that time. Yeah. Imagine having that day in and day out. We can't take off saying, so I told you earlier that there are about 20 to 25 people, on an average about 22 people working at a time in that ship. Yeah. So if there is a huge typhoon or a hurricane, uh, in the land, of course we can say I'm not coming for work because there is rain expected, I need to take off. Can you imagine doing that on board? They are there, and when we have discussions with captains and other seafarers, they've told us things like, I was in the eye of the cyclone, I was in the eye of the whirlpool. So it's so interesting when we talk to them about how the environment works together with them, uh, helping them, or allowing them to understand the psychological aspects of it. We also know that there are geographic hazards. It could be a coral reef, it could be a iceberg, it could be anything. So for example, like the Titanic. So what do we understand is, of course we do have our GPS, the satellite images right now, which was not there in the 1980s and early 1990s. And when we discuss with very senior captains and chief engineers, they really tell us the struggles they've gone, and we really see that struggles have helped them be more resilient in life. Yeah? They can also be technological hazard, of course, like in any newer world problems. They can be engine issues, they can be equipment failures, and also we need to understand that it's not just the technical aspects which we are looking at, it is the man-made hazards which we are looking at. So there can be machinery problems which could be a human error, and that's where the psychologist is involved in. They can also be piracy and kidnapping by pirates. We've met a couple of them who've been kidnapped, and severe trauma because of that, the PTSDs because of that. And it's very interesting as a psychologist, for me to discuss their challenges, their experiences, their learning on board, and which many times I've used that as also a self motivation for me. I can be honest here. Yeah. And I've told them that, you've been very inspiring for me. Yes. So this is how a usual working place in the merchant navy ship would look like. So we see lot of machinery, lot of equipments, lot of hard labor. Yeah, you can also see a woman there. Lot of hot water aspects, sort of oil aspects, lot of fire equipments involved, lot of geography, physics, maths, the calculations to be done, the longitudes and the latitudes to be done, lot of planning to be done between the master and the chief engineer. So the top four officers are called the master or the captain, the chief officer, that would be deck side, and in the engine side we have the chief engineer and the second engineer. So these are very important people on board who would make lot of decisions, especially regarding navigation, maneuvering, etc. Yes. So you understand that there's lot of work involved. However, they have the provision of maybe 22 people. So if the captain is not well, there is no other captain who can take over. And immediately for a substitute captain or a substitute fitter, or anybody of any rank to come in immediately is a big, big challenge. Because suppose the ship is in the middle of Pacific and suddenly somebody falls sick, physically or psychologically, suddenly to airlift that man or woman and take them to the shore, have a substitute provided immediately, is going to be a big, big challenge. And that is also a reason why they include psychologists there, because it's also on our job profile that we need to look at their psychological fitness. We also need to look at their readiness to sail. We're also looking at their cognitive skills, and of course the psychological skills, to allow us to give us the impression that they are ready to sail. Yeah? As we move ahead, I'll give you more real life examples. So what is a marine psychologist? Of course, a marine psychologist is a psychologist who helps the seafarers both in psychological and cognitive aspects. And why is it very important for us to be involved? Is because there's a lot of psychological and emotional issues because of the hazards involved. Yes. If you look at it, when right from 2011, I was reading through, learning, understanding, and through the work experience plus my discussions with my counterparts. So when I got trained in Denmark, they have a beautiful setup where there are a few clinical psychologists and industrial psychologists who work together in the marine field. So they were able to impress on how every bit of psychology we learn, starting from general psychology, the conditioning theories, the leadership, the personality theories, the motivation theories, to moving on to psychopathology, research, ethics, cultural psychology, everything we learn in our bachelor days in psychology and masters and MPhil, anything, all the topics are equally used in practice there. So we see all of what we learn, the knowledge what we have from the psychological studies are all used there. And it's a wow moment when we actually know, okay, wow, I learned, conditioning theory, and I know how it is being used here. I can use it for either therapy or making them understand. And it's always a wow moment to understand how all the knowledge we've used, learned so far is being used here. We are also very, very happy, or I was very motivated when I saw the ethical aspects of it when it came to shipping, because these are people who strongly consider ethics, value systems, uh, like being honest, being accountable, being responsible. All these are important ethical values to them. Yeah. So what happens here is that these are people who consider breaching rules or breaking rules as very difficult, or in fact, many of them think it's a crime even to, make a small aberration in rules. They follow rules. So yesterday we were doing a online assessment for a group of seafarers, and I told him that I would quote him. So he said, "Safety cannot be broken in any way. Safety cannot be taken as an excuse for not doing a work." So he says you have to do your work and it has to be done safely. And I've heard that from 2011, almost, I can't say almost, everyone, there's not even one man or woman who said that safeties or rules are not important. So that's the kind of training we see, and that's the kind of value systems they hold on. Language and culture. Language and culture has always been very interesting for me because I come from a different cultural background. We speak a different language in my house, whereas when used to be in UC College, I had to speak Malayalam. And then when I moved to Manipal, I had to speak Kannada. And then in Chennai, now I speak Tamil. So there's a lot of language, and I always used to wonder, within these few vernacular languages, there's so much of cultural differences. So we are also looking at people from South India, North India. We are looking from about people from different parts of Asia. It could be Burma, Bangladesh, Pakistan. It could be Philippines. We are also looking at Europe. We are looking at Denmark. We are looking at Hungary, Italy, mm, Ukraine. We are also looking at a huge population of UK. We are looking at a huge population of USA. So what are we looking at here is that all of them are working together, and that's the beauty of shipping, where everyone is together to complete the work. It's not moving from port A to port B. It's also the process of work involved, which is very, very important for them. And that's the beauty of language and cultural aspects here. Yeah. Moving ahead, life in the sea, of course, has its pros and cons. And we see lots of people, especially the newer generation of people who have completed 12th, getting into shipping as a profession. What do we understand as the advantages of being a seafarer is, of course, the salary. So almost 99% have told me that salary, the money, is a major motivation for them to get into this job. Of course, visiting a lot of countries and there's no corruption, understanding that you are a global citizen, sailing together, and there are work timings could be like 3 to 4 months in some companies it even extends to longer months. uh, and then once you sign off for almost like 3 months, you're at home, so you're like completely at home, not bothered about work. So that is the beauty about it. So somebody whom we were discussing about seafaring, he is a captain, and he's from Denmark. So he told me the best part of sailing is that I don't have to drive my car to my office every day. I can wake up, uh, get changed, wear my overalls, and get into the workplace. So there's absolutely no time spent on traveling or driving, and that's the kind of lack of stress which he was talking about compared to a job on the shore. Yes, of course, it is not a life without problems, and that's where the psychologist work actually comes in. So we know that they can be away from uh, their families for a long time. Of course, they do have the Skype and the internet and the phone calls facilities provided, but there can be times when the internet would not connect properly, or they would miss out on home food. Or many times we've also heard stories where somebody very close to them, like their father or mother or somebody who's very very close to them, uh, had a major emergency and they just couldn't sign off and come back. Recently we met a person who had lost his mother. He was the youngest of the family, and he was shipping, and he was somewhere, I think he was somewhere in China, and he couldn't sign off immediately because there was nobody to substitute his work. He lost his mother. This was somewhere in 2019. He couldn't reach on time for the funeral, and the grief continued. So I met him around January this year, and the grief was, he knew that he was in shipping. He knew that he couldn't sign off, but still somewhere in his mind he felt that if there was a chance, if I could sign off immediately, if I could at least speak to my mother just before the she fell sick. So that is where the grief counseling happened, and it was a beautiful session. It was very a good job satisfaction for me as well, and of course he gave us a good feedback. uh, However, it is a very brief counseling, and it's kind of heartwarming for me that a psychologist can use her skills here to allow the individual to come out of a mental health issue, and which is very heartwarming for me as a professional. Yes, we also see a lot of time zones. So the plus point of it is, one sailor told me that he could celebrate the New Year's 2 times, because once he move from the other side of the GMT, you have 31st on one side, and you have your first January 1st, you enjoy that, and then the ship moves to the other side of the GMT, and then you have the again New Year coming, and that's like wow for me. Yes, imagine having New Year on the same day within a span of few hours. Yeah, uh, we also see that because of the changing time zones, because they keep constantly shifting on different latitudes and longitudes, they can also have difficulty in sleeping, which could also lead to a lot of burnout and anxieties and panics and depression. Yes, no immediate access to doctors and support. So if they fall sick, if they have a fracture, they're all provided with the training of medical aid. So the initial first aid is being taught to them, and they all know CPR and all the emergency work. We are also now training, a lot of companies are asking us to train them on psychological first aid, and we found it very very useful, especially when there is lack of connectivity, internet facilities. And we are immediately, a psychologist can't be connected to the individual or the group of individuals. Yes, we are also looking at relationship issues, because many times what happens is, this person would have got married, he had to travel immediately, he's not able to have a good connect with his wife, and then it's always long distance, and you know how it is when there is long distance, issues can happen, communication problems can happen. There are times when they miss out on milestones of their child. So there are times when the wife would have taken pictures or videos of the first time the baby walked, the first time the baby smiled. So they know that videos are there, but they still feel that, if I was there, I could have actually seen it. Yeah. It's also, as I was telling you earlier, there are stringent deadlines, there are very strict rules. You just cannot throw away a peel of banana into the water. It has to be noted, it has to be in the checklist. Otherwise, you are going to be penalized for environmental pollution. So, if a small bit of banana can do that, you can imagine the amount of rules and regulations which can be for other aspects as well. Yeah, too many exams. Most of them say that because for each seat time, they need to have, for each career growth, they need to have so many seat time, and they also need to have certain exams to be done, which again can be difficult. And many of them have said it is difficult to get a life partner because many times it's mostly the male officers who have said that, because mostly female officers after a point they take a shore job, and they're at in the office on the shore. But the male officers say that they find it difficult to find a life partner because many times the spouse wouldn't want a long distance relationship, and they try to get into shore jobs. And so that was one of our studies where we wanted to know what was the main reason why many people are taking shore jobs even though they say they love sailing. Yeah. And that study is also given in my references. Okay. So I don't know whether this would come, but I would request all of you, this is a video which is available online, so I would request all of you to please go through the video. I wouldn't go into it right now, but this is available on YouTube, and please go through this and you will see the different aspects of accidents that can happen on board, and which also gives us an idea of how difficult life can be on board. Yeah. So I'm not getting into that right now. I will go to the next slide. Yeah. So what are we looking at as marine psychologists here? Of course, as I told you, as we moved ahead, provide psychological therapy. Of course, I will also tell you what are the therapies we offer. Assist senior officers in terms of decision making. Trauma counseling is a huge area because they would have had a small trauma or a severe trauma, and there is a lot of need for group work and individual work, psychological therapies to be done there. We also provide psychological assessments for promotion and readiness when they have a break in job. Are they ready to get back to work? And we are also looking at their psychological readiness, as in personality traits, cognitive skills, work needs, leadership skills, to see whether they are ready for promotion. Family and relationship counseling, as I told you earlier. Training strategies, so we also look at barefoot counseling, we look at psychological first aid, which allows us to understand and help the senior officers to help the group. Yeah. Determine rank wise good fit in personality. Conducting research is a huge area. Why I'm focusing on research also here is because uh, this is one area where there is not much research being done, and lot of the research is being done by the seafarers themselves. So they almost, I think, all the companies whom I've spoken to, the senior officials, they've said we need research because there is a lot of gap in information, and we still don't know certain reasons why errors have happened, why this has happened. So we are looking at lot of young minds there to look at research. Yeah. So it is definitely a different working department there. So we see these are the three main departments, and in each of the departments, as I said, we do have the captain chief engineer as the main heads, and we do have the bosun. So the non-officers are usually people who have not finished their 10th, so they would be somebody who's either just finished 10th or ITI, and or maybe people lower than that. But the engine department and the deck department are the professionals, and we usually meet the engine and the deck department. Of course, we do have to meet the non-officers, but culturally, linguistically, we do see a difference in them. But finally, they're all human beings, and they do have psychological difficulties. I wouldn't call them as disorders, difficulties which definitely a marine psychologist has a big role to play with. Yeah. This is from the book by Gregory and Paul Shanahan. This was a book given to us, and this when I joined Denmark, the training team, and what was told to us is read and understand everything about it. Tomorrow morning you will have a test about it. So it was a very interesting read, and lot of, if you can easily download it from the internet. Lot of information on how people work in the shipping industry. So if you look at it, it's very simple. We understand that people make decisions. Of course, people make mistakes. People get tired and stressed out. People have to communicate with each other. People have to work along with each other. And there's always a risk involved, and people are trying to learn and develop. And that is what all human beings do, right? We are looking at it from the angle of ship. Yeah. So we are also looking at young minds to start writing on Asian population. This book is for the European population. So there is a strong need for similar reading materials to be developed in the Asian population. Yeah. There's a lot of studies in seafarers and stressors. So if you look at it, most of the studies show that there are people who are strongly having homesickness. There are people finding environmental factors as a major difficulty. There are people who consider you know mismanagement in expectations, at-risk behaviors, where we are looking at organizational culture. So lot of studies which are mostly, if you see latest part of the studies, we don't see much studies in the 1980s and early 1990s. As we move ahead to thousands, we see more and more studies, and these are some of the studies in the Indian context. That's our study, one of the study which we wanted to look at why career change in seafarers. Yes. Human errors are a large aspect where we need lot of research on, and most of the companies which we cater to, they've asked us very specifically to look at why do we make errors. Why is it that this particular individual is not able to make, think, or plan as per the rules and regulations. Yes. So if you look at it, this particular paper, research article was very interesting because it gave us lot of information on the different errors which people can get into, and this is per se for the shipping field. So we are looking at skill-based errors, decision errors. It could be a sequential error. So what are we seeing here is very importantly cognitive flexibility. We are looking at working memory. We are looking at executive functioning. So we are looking at neuropsychology here right there working. And it's so interesting that, our assessments, the neuropsychological assessment, the psychological assessments are all going to be important part of decision making in their career. And they take it very seriously because they also know that it is an important aspect in their career growth. Yeah. If you look at this, we see lot of accidents happening. You see fire on board, you see a ship collapse. So what happens here is, of course, we are looking at difficulty in planning, difficulty in decision making, trauma. We also look at how they can manage crisis, and we are looking at during the crisis interventions, post crisis intervention, and of course before the crisis. So even before we have the crisis, we need to see to it that as psychologists we find the good fit. So it is a huge challenge for us as well, because when I started, this was the advice given to me by my teacher, the marine psychologist in Denmark, Mr. Ivan. So what he said is that if you have a difficulty in making decisions, think that it is a life of 20 to 25 people, and it involves billions of dollars. So would you make a wrong decision when it involves priceless human being and so much of dollars involved? Yeah. And that was a strong sense of message for me, because I knew the enormity of decisions which I am getting into. This is another accident where the ship which is supposed to sail in water has somehow, because of miscommunication between the ship and the pilot boat which maneuvers or navigates the ship into shallow waters, had actually gone and had a major miscommunication, and the ship and had to go wreck into the the land, sorry. And we also saw that, the hulk was badly broken, and that involved a lot of risk analysis, incident analysis, and that involved a lot of discussions and money. So, that's where, so we are not included in the money planning aspect of it, but of course, we are included in the psychological aspects of it. Yes. What can cause accidents, which is very important, because even in India, there are a lot of journals which are talking about collisions, accidents, fire, explosions. So many shipping companies have brought in this aspect of reporting near misses. So if a particular sailor or seafarer sees somebody else who is not wearing their PPEs or not following rules, not following the safety harness, or not wearing the right glove, not keeping the checklist properly, even before the accident happens, they can report it, and many times they do get rewards for it, and which is, again, we are looking at conditioning, we are looking at motivation, we are looking at reinforcement. Yeah. And that we've seen that many times many accidents were being able to stop or revert, because there was this culture of reporting near misses. Okay. What can cause human errors? When there is too much of pressure or too less, so we know that people can get complacent. So when they are doing very monotonous jobs, like yesterday I was discussing with a particular chief engineer, that his fitter had to keep painting this huge tank, because there was constantly a leak of chemical, and he had to keep wiping painting, because every time it was leaking, and this is over a period of few days, like a 1 week. He was doing it very regularly, and it was getting very monotonous for this man. So imagine somebody doing this throughout, and that can lead to maybe a risky behavior, because he can think of how long will I do this. But you can also imagine if that leads to a major spill, or if that leads to a corrosive aspect, if there is a corrosion or blockage or leakage in the ship, either it could be a chemical or it could be water, the kind of hazard which can happen because of this. Yeah. So this particular gentleman knew that this is going into a major hazard, and then they had to open up the vault and see what is actually inside and see what they could do in repair. Yes. There could be a lot of cultural and moral values. So there are certain cultures, like for example, when we work with a culture like Philippines, so the Filipinos, as such, are not very assertive people, so they consider talking back to a senior member as maybe not acceptable in their culture. However, what we also need to understand is this was a real incident where the master made a miscalculation, and the ship actually went and hit another ship. So when we looked at incident analysis later on, we saw that the chief officer, who was a Filipino, was not assertive enough to tell the master that the calculation was wrong. So we started looking at, that is where we need to work on. So right from cultural values, and starting from assertive skill training, we had to work on changing the value system, but and looking at responsibilities. Yes. Fatigue, as we all know, is a huge contributor. Communication is also another huge contributor which can cause human errors. Natural environment, we can't do anything about it, but of course knowledge about the environment and skills developed to handle that is very important. Yes. Moving ahead, why does the shipping industry need a mental health professional? One, as I was telling you right from the beginning, it is a high hazard industry. There's a lot of money involved, and of course, human life, which is priceless. Consider a world without trade. How can we have our mushrooms or the cheese? How can we move ahead without fuel. So we know that our cars are being imported, we know the fuel being imported, we know that our food trade gets stopped, we know our the curries and the potatoes have to be exported to other countries, and we can't always do this in maybe through railways or airways. It has to be through the waterways, and that is where the shipping industry comes in. So somebody in the shipping field was telling me about 2 years back when we had discussions that, if the shipping industry stops working for even one day, the whole world is going to stop. Yeah, because it will influence the economy, it will influence trade, it will influence the whole global economy. Yeah, cultural benefits, of course, and as I told, psychological theory in practice. Yes. Moving ahead a little bit on what do we do in the Indian scenario. So what happened is I'll give you a little bit of my own life story, how I landed up in Denmark. So my life was going great. I'm married. My kids are 13 now. They're twins. And in 2011, what happened was that my daughter is smiling at me. So what happened was that suddenly there was a call from a captain. I didn't know he was a captain at that point because he called me on the mobile and I didn't know who it was. So he called me and asked me, "Do you want to travel to Denmark?" So I thought it was a crank call because who would, suddenly call me and ask me, "Do you want to travel to Denmark?" So I said, "No, I'll get back to you." And I just cut the call. And I spoke to my husband and said, "Somebody's calling and saying this." So, and we just laughed it out. And I went to Apollo and my work was happening like that. In the evening, my friend called up. She's also a clinical psychologist based in Chennai. And she called up to ask me, "Did somebody call you, asking you to travel to Denmark?" So I like, yeah, yeah, I also got the call. What do you think? So she had done her homework, and thanks to her that I am here right now. She had done her homework and she had googled through and spoken to this particular person in depth and found that this company is authentic. So then we thought, okay, why not? Why don't we just go meet this individual and see how matters are? And that's how the journey started. So this particular company is called Merce Training. If you watch movies, if you have seen Captain Phillip, I don't know how many of you have seen that movie. Please watch the movie. It's a real life incident where in Musk, Captain Phillip was being kidnapped, and the piracy attacks, and of course we do work with people who have been traumatized like that. So Musk Training was what called us, and four of us were selected from India, and we were taken to Denmark. This was around November. And we had, we were fortunate enough to be there for almost like 3 weeks. So during Christmas, it was holiday time. However, we were working and learning along with having fun. So we took 1 week off and we saw around Svenborg and Copenhagen and Malmo and all the other, a few cities like that. The 3 weeks were very intensive, hands-on training where we had to go through each and every aspect of seafaring. We had to go through. So they did not actually teach us on how to do advanced progressive matrices because we've already learned it in our training. What we were taught was how to use that knowledge in the shipping industry. And that I felt was very important because, of course, as psychologists, we know most of the assessments. We know how do we administer test and how do we interpret it, how do we write a report. But we had to do it on the basis, in the perspective of the shipping field. Yeah, and that was a big learning. If I look back now into 2011. So when we came back, we've been doing training, assessments, therapies for seafarers in Southeast Asia, and that also involved a lot of traveling to Singapore and Manila, Philippines, and that also opened my eyes into the whole world of how we are global citizens, how even though we are all different in culturally, we all have similar difficulties in life, and how as psychologists we can actually touch lives in different parts of the world. Yeah. So what we do in our center, so Dr. Sandhya and I have started this company called Element H, Psychological Support System. H again stands for the human element, which because we were inspired by the shipping industry as such. So these are most of the tests which we use. Of course, we use the other tests as well, but these are most of the tests which we use, and we are also looking at developing norms, especially in the shipping industry. We've also using simulator assisted observation. For that, we go to the a shipping office because we cannot afford a simulator. It's very expensive. So a particular training college has the simulator, and we go there. So what do we do in the simulator is we actually put the seafarers there and provide them with a real life incident. As to it could be collision, it could be a tsunami, or it could be one of the real life incidents, and we actually see how they would behave, experience, communicate, and that gives us lot of in-depth information on how the psychological aspects of it, cognitive aspects of it, and that is very important when we have to make decisions. Yes. So this is one of the data which we have used. This is by one of the seafarers with whom I had met around March. And we look at different aspects and we see how the personality factors would fit in when they look at different ranks. Uh, Moving ahead, these are some of the psychological therapies which people in my company are trained with. So I am trained in most of them. Some of them are trained in some psychologists who work along with us also help us. So it's always a team. So we do have two psychiatrists also involved because there are times when we need medication. So there is a male psychiatrist and a female psychiatrist, and all the others are women in my team. So what we do is all of this therapies along with the assessments and along with the workshops, and right now we do webinars because of the lockdown. Yeah. Moving ahead, this is as Dr. Nilima said in the introduction that we do have plans of developing a course in marine psychology, and that would be the first in Southeast Asia. The only other place where we have a course in marine psychology is in Malmo, Sweden. I don't know how rigorous it is because I've not done it, and the only thing I know is that it is quite expensive, and that's also a reason why we felt that for the Southeast Asian or the Asian population, we need to have something in India. And what we also understand is that the Indian coastline is quite long compared to UK and USA, but the amount of time, importance given by the government to the Indian coastline, to the shipping field, is not as much as what the UK government or the US government gives. Or even if you take Philippines, shipping is a very strong industry there compared to India. However, we do have a lot of people involved in shipping, and that is the reason why there is a strong need for psychologists to be there. Yeah? This is the Indian Maritime University, which is in Chennai, and these are our counterparts here. Dr. Sandhya is also involved in teaching in one of these universities. We help them with the psychological aspects of it. Life skills training is also done, and that's me and her. And this is in 2011 when we were in Denmark. It was very cold, Christmas, just before Christmas, and we were going through the Halloween and all that. This is what they do in mask. I have been allowed to use this picture. So this is kind of team building where people from different nationalities, they have tug of war. They also organize karaoke because the Filipinos like to sing. So the Ukrainians like things like tug of war where there is more muscle power. Indians like cricket. So it depends on the majority of people in the crew and officers what they plan on having organizing these kind of parties. They celebrate Holi, they celebrate Diwali, they celebrate Christmas, they celebrate Thanksgiving, the works. Yes. So finally, when they look at it, when we look at it, it's like a family. It's like all of them are together. and of course they support each other. And that's also a reason why when we teach them barefoot counseling and PFA, they are very very eager to learn this so that they can help the emergency they can take care of. And when there is a larger need for more clinical intervention, of course they're happy to connect back to us even if the person is on board. Yes, we are doing this online mode. That's me and Sandhya with other. We just finished it 2 days yesterday, so that's us again. This is few of our clients where we talk to, and some of them are I think all of them. Only Sanmar is Indian. All of them are based in Denmark or other Asian countries. And it's always a pleasure to travel around, try different cuisines, understand culture, and of course bring psychology on board. Yes. So that is my last slide. So what do we understand here is that most of them take up a lot of hobbies. So they do have time for it, they have eagerness for it, and they all of them also look at using their time to develop new skills. So this is a photo given by one of them, one of the captains, and what he told me is that it's so interesting and it's so inspiring to see the water, to be in the ocean, to see the sunrise and the sunsets. But what is so interesting is being there in the water, watching the sunrise and the sunset. And every country, every ocean has a different hue to the horizon. And that was like wow for me, because I love to see the nature. And when it comes from a person like a seafarer who's so much in touch with nature, and they really consider nature as very very important and aspect, because they know how important the sea is for them. Yeah, and that value system is very strongly holding on to them. Yes, that's my team, all of us, the ladies in the pink. And that was when we had a book launch, so all of us in that. So I would be happy to answer your queries. Please log on to our Instagram and Facebook pages to know more about us. We do offer um, internship, and we do offer training in the marine field, of course, along with the other fields of psychology. Marine field, only few of us are trained, and few of us are actually offering internship on this. And of course, we would be happy to support you in learning more. Yeah. So I will stop sharing, and I'll be happy to take questions.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Now it's time for the question answer session. Participants can share your questions in the comment box. Ma'am, the first query has come from Alan Roy. I shall read it out for you, ma'am. Ma'am, the scope of marine psychology in India.
Okay, thank you, Ellen, for the question. As I told you, there's a huge scope for marine psychology in India. Why I'm saying that is because there is a lot of demand, but absolutely very less supply. So there are very few people who have actually been trained, who actually know nuances of it. Of course, there are a lot of psychologists, but we are looking at psychology in the marine field. So unless we know the cultural aspects of it, the environmental aspects of it, nuances of it, it is difficult. So what do we need to understand is develop skills. You will definitely have a niche area there. I hope I've answered your question. And of course, if you are looking at moving ahead abroad, that there is also a strong role there in countries like Denmark and Europe, other Asian countries. Of course, they are looking at marine psychologists. We are considered, marine psychologists are given equal importance like how a clinical psychologist or an organizational psychologist would get in other countries.
Thank you, ma'am. We have another question from Alan Roy. What are the disadvantages of marine psychology?
Disadvantages as such from the psychologist point of view or from the seafarer's point of view? Can you make that clear?
And this is the question. This is how it was
Okay.
posted.
Can you
We just
please type that because I would like to know, is it disadvantages from the marine psychologist point of view or from the seafarer's point of view? Seafarer's point of view, I've already discussed. There are, of course, disadvantages, which is there in one of my slides, where distance, the relationship being long distance, connectivity issues, missing out on milestones, time difficulties because of the time differences. And if you're asking if disadvantages of being a marine psychologist from a psychologist point of view, of course there are some difficulties like how you have in all fields. So I'm a clinical psychologist, so I know that there are times when I get messages from people who are contemplating self-harm, so that can be emotionally sometimes tasking for me. There are times when this is about clinical psychology. I won't go there now. I'm talking about marine psychology. So what I felt is that once you have the skills, uh, it's not like a disadvantage, it is more of a challenge. And and as psychologists, I think we should be happy to take challenges. So one challenge which I felt initial phase was the traveling. So when I had to travel to countries like Philippines, I did not know the language. I took time to read up on the culture. I took time to talk to them about culture. And fortunately, there were a lot of people eagerly sitting with me to discuss about their value system, their culture, and other aspects of what a psychologist would want to know. Yeah. So of course, that if you want, you can look at that as a disadvantage, because you would be, you know, you will have to focus on understanding different cultures. But I think, you know that's the fun part of it. That's, that makes you alive, that makes you understand that as a human being you can connect with so many people. And as such, I can't think of any disadvantage, because I've not felt. Of course there can be dilemmas which you can get, like for example, dilemmas as to, is he actually a fit, is he or she ready to be promoted. But that's the reason why we do have the psychological assessments, and it's always two psychologists, even in my team, even in Denmark, they all look at two psychologists, to get working together, assessing an individual, so that we always have a discussion between us, so that both of us can discuss, think clearly before we make a decision. So, I can't think of a disadvantage. Of course, challenges are there. And I feel in any field, unless we have challenges, we tend to become complacent. So that's when our, gray matter starts declining. And we need the challenges to keep our graph up, and especially for the gray matter to work. I hope I've answered that.
Thank you, ma'am. The next question is from Rohit Raj. I am a postgraduate in counseling psychology. Can I go for a PhD in marine psychology?
Yes, of course. Only thing is, right now, I don't know if there is a university which offers both psychology and marine psychology together. What you can look at is, you can tie up with one of the marine universities and look at them as your interdisciplinary study. So you would do your PhD under a psychology department, having an interdisciplinary attachment or connection to the marine university. So there are a lot of people who are doing that, where they have a tie-up. So many, mariners are looking at doing interdisciplinary PhDs in psychology. And there's somebody whom I know who's right now doing, he's a captain, but he is also looking at psychological aspects. A few of them who are psychologists, who are looking at using cognitive skills or psychological aspects in the marine field as part of their PhD, which can be done. Yes.
Thank you, ma'am. Again, we have a question from Rohit Raj. Does a marine psychologist have to spend most of his days in ship?
Okay. That's a question which I get all the time, and I apologize that I didn't make that clear. We don't have to be sitting in the ship. We can do it sitting right here. It could be your hospital setting or your home. So right now I'm at home, and you can do it on Skype. So even before the lockdown, we were doing it on Skype, because if you are starting to travel, you're always away. And it's not that, as I told you, there are 90,000 ships, and in each ship there are about 25 people, and we are only about 5 or 6. How can you cater to the whole world? Yeah, even in India, there's a large number of vessels with large number of shipping people in the shipping. We can't be catering to everyone, and that's the reason why we provide the service sitting in either in the office or the hospital, or right now at home, and we can always connect. And if they need more long term, as in mostly it is brief counseling. Long term, we don't do psychodynamic therapies and all with them. It's mostly briefer therapies, and then I request the company to send them to the clinic, where I can do more in-depth psychological assessments and therapy. So we don't have to sit inside the chip at all.
Thank you, ma'am. We have another question from Anaga. Is marine psychology a scopeful job in the government sector?
Okay. See, there are areas like the like in Cochin there is a port, in Chennai there is a port. However, so far there is nobody who is actually applied for a psychologist post there. I'm not even sure whether they have a post there. It is for you young minds to develop awareness for the Indian government, to make them understand that there is a strong area here where there is a need for psychologists, be it Chennai port or Cochin port or Mumbai port, Vishakhapatnam port in anywhere. So if you see the Indian map, have we as in the Indian continent has a long ocean, as the we have less of land on the lower side. It's more of the ocean, and that is a very very strong point, because we have a large capacity of developing marine. However, not many people know about it, and only when there are voices heard will the government sector listen to it.
Thank you, ma'am. The next question from one of the participants is there masters in marine psychology, ma'am?
Thank you for that. So far, we do not have a master's in marine psychology. That's what I was telling you, that we are in discussions with Raksha Shakti University, which is based in Ahmedabad, and hopefully, fingers crossed, we are looking at starting as a certificate course and then eventually moving on as a postgraduate course in maybe by the next year. So the syllabus, everything is ready. We just have to get the green signal from UGC and the university.
Thank you, ma'am.
Otherwise, you can do it.
Sorry, ma'am. Next
Yeah,
question is from
Yeah.
Anupriya. Do you want to do any other course after completing MSc Psychology to become a marine psychologist?
Okay. See, right now, as I was telling you, it's not very clear that, because we do not have a very clear, like in clinical psychology, we know that after your master's, you do your MPhil from one of the RCA. We do not have like a very clear trajectory there. However, we are trying to make it develop so that after the MSc, or even in MSc, like how we have MSc forensic, we are also looking at developing MSc marine, which would maybe later on develop. But as of now, what the shipping companies are looking at is, after your masters, get trained. So like how I got trained in Denmark, like that. Or you can look at companies like ours, Element Edge, where you get placed and trained. So we make you, we teach you, we allow you to use all the tests on the seafarers, and we also ask you to assist and help us later on in the different shipping companies where we work. So only when you have a hands-on training, it's easier for you to impress upon the shipping company that you've been trained and you will be an asset. I hope I've answered that.
Thank you, ma'am. The next question is from Boris. I have seen situations like senior officer giving stress to junior officer and junior officer getting psychological consultation. Is it the senior officer who should be getting the consultation?
I don't know if you're looking at a very specific question, and I don't know how much of this is a hypothesis. Of course, we've had junior officers and senior officers having miscommunications and difficulties. And of course, we have seen that at this point, we do, in case if in the interview, in the clinical interview, if this point comes in, we do inform the superintendent of the shipping organization, and then we take it to it that if the senior officer can also be involved in consultation. So we've had that, and we've taken steps to move ahead. So it's only a few companies which we cater. We can't be catering to all the shipping industry, the companies. The few companies who understand the need for shipping and where we've had a good rapport, it is easier for us to, if there is a problem like this, it's easier for us to communicate. And also then the superintendent or the top management would ask the senior officer also to come in for a consultation. So we've had that.
Thank you, ma'am. Next question is from Prinsila Sajan. Best colleges for studying marine psychology.
I think this question is being repeated. As I told you, right now, only Malmo in Sweden. And maybe by 2021, we might give you that, Raksha Shakti University in Ahmedabad would start the course. So right now, you can do internships. You can get trained after your PG to, get more hands-on in marine.
Thank you, ma'am. Next is from Abhijit. What are the steps we should take to become an effective marine psychologist?
So that's a very beautiful, interesting question. Thank you, Abhijit. First step is take active interest in knowing what is the marine field. Yeah. So what is the life of a seafarer? What is the vocabulary they use? So if you can discuss with the seafarer, so if you live in Kerala, in Cochin, there are so many of them there, and if you know someone, please take time to talk to them. Go to a shipping organization, talk to them, offer services, and see if you can, interact, have discussions with them. That's very important, because only when you know their field, because we do not have like an ICD or a DSM to give us more information on the pathology of them or difficulties of them. And that's the reason why research there is very, very important. So starting from grassroots is what we are looking at. And then look at internship in different, it could be companies like Element Edge or other companies. There is Dr. Deepti in Mumbai who also offers, Dr. Aparajita in Chennai who also offers. So there are other people who also offer internships. They are also psychologists who are involved in the marine field. So that is the only available right now prospect. But of course, maybe once the lockdown is over, if you have the money and the possibility of traveling to Sweden, that's also one possibility. Or if you could wait till 2021, and once the government allows the course to be started, always Ahmedabad is an option.
Thank you, ma'am. The next question is, what is the duration of the training period?
For the internship, because we are looking at master's degree, which would be again 2 years. Like how, see now, if you discuss with Professor Vaya is the senior most forensic psychologist, and she's helping us with developing the marine psychology course. So what madam said is, when she started developing the forensic psychology course, she had like a clear cut idea of what the 2 years should happen, and that's exactly what we are taking in inputs from ma'am and developing the marine psychology course. Yeah, so it would be 2 years post graduation, like how you would do for counseling or clinical or industrial. Yeah, So that would be 2 years. But right now, I do not have the answer where can you do that, because we've not got the UGC permission for that. However, why I wanted you all to look at it is, eventually, maybe by 2021, once a course starts, there is always a huge opportunity opening up there. Yeah. And right now, what the duration would be in internship would be about 3 months hands on, where you are there to help you learn nuances of hands on experience working with the seafarers.
Thank you, ma'am. You have answered all the questions we got from our participants. So we have come to the end of our webinar. Let me now take some time to thank each and every one of you. A webinar series like this is a result of the hard work of a number of people. Dr. Keerthi Pai ma'am has contributed to our efforts by agreeing to be the speaker for this program, and ma'am's session has been an insightful as well as inspiring one. I take this opportunity to thank her wholeheartedly on behalf of this college, the department, and all the participants of this webinar. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you very much.
Next, I would like to thank the college authorities, our respected principal, Dr. David Saj Matthew, and our beloved manager, Reverend Thomas John, for their support for the conduct of this webinar series. I would also like to place on record the tireless efforts put forward by the teachers of our department, especially the head of our department, Ms. Saina Susan Abraham, Dr. Neelima Ranjit, who introduced the speaker, and the coordinator of today's program, Dr. Merikuti PJ. Thank you, dear teachers. A special word of thanks to Akhilesh of MSc Psychology for rendering all the technical support. A webinar is only as successful as the participants make it. We were blessed to have more than 100 participants for today's webinar. They consisted of a mixed group of students and teachers from various colleges, research scholars, and professionals from the field of psychology. I would like to convey a heartfelt thanks to all the participants who made today's webinar a great success. Thanking everyone once again. Participants, kindly fill in the feedback form posted in the comment section at the earliest so as to ensure your e-certificates. See you for the next webinar. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I would like to extend my gratitude to my teachers, all senior faculty members, and my dear friends to have invited me, and all participants who have been patiently listening and being with me for so long. Thank you, especially for Nicole and Akhilesh for taking me, also helping me with the technicalities of it. And of course, thank you, Dr. Neelima. Thank you very much.